All right, these next 2 weeks we're going to be talking about the Gospel of Mark. You're going to be reading that. So let's go over a little bit about Mark as we begin our reading. So Mark was written somewhere around 65 to 75 CE. Believed to maybe be written somewhere around Syria, maybe modern day Palestine, possibly even up in Rome. The reason why we think maybe even up in Rome is he has some interactions with Peter, and Peter died around 64 up in Rome when he was imprisoned and all that. So we know Mark gets some information about Jesus from Peter. Mark is also the closest gospel written to Jesus historically. And you'll see from the other gospels, Matthew and Luke, they'll take some information from Mark and apply them to their gospels. So Mark is an important gospel. He's the major first one being written down. So a couple unique things about Mark. Mark is not written well. It's kind of sloppy if you're really good at kind of figuring that out and kind of pointing that out about individuals' writings. Mark is kind of a sloppy writer, and that's okay. This is how Mark writes. This is how he talks. And he also does, but he does a good job, and he does a good job, a really interesting job of lifting up Jesus's divinity and also his human nature. So you'll see just some of the struggles that Jesus has and just the parts that make him human, maybe kind of hone in on that, see where you're seeing that in your reading, where Jesus is really showing his human side, his imperfectness at times. I know we love to say that Jesus is perfect, but there's times that Jesus is grouchy and has some struggles and gets overwhelmed. But you'll see in the Gospel of Mark, a lot of tension between Jesus and the Roman leaders and the religious leaders. So Mark is kind of known to be more of a political gospel because of that, because you see this tension really building up, and it even kind of shows Jesus's radicalness in the shadow of those leaders and those powers. But when we think politics and we think Bible, we don't want to think Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, those kinds of things, because that's not a thing from the gospel. It's not a thing from the Bible. However, our faith and Jesus' ministry can help inform our politics or what we support or who we support or how we support issues. And you'll see and hopefully be moved by some of what Mark writes about Jesus and be challenged by some of Jesus's behaviors and sayings and ministry and that. So Mark's gospel is also written for non-Jews. So it's a little different than when we just read Matthew. Matthew was written for a Jewish audience. That's where you see a lot of the fulfillment of the law, because that was really important to the Jewish audience. Mark isn't concerned about that. That's not what Mark is trying to lift up about Jesus. So, Mark is a good gospel. It's not a long read. It's a quicker read. I think it's an easier read of all the Gospels. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy reading the Gospel of Mark these next 2 weeks. And look for more videos about the breakdown of Mark.